everybody just take a moment, and if it feels safe for you to close your eyes, and just close your eyes for a moment and just start to feel your breath. Just notice your inhale as you're breathing in, and notice your exhale as you're breathing out. And just bring your consciousness and your awareness to this moment, to this really beautiful moment that we gather together. And keep breathing throughout this whole entire call. Excuse me, notice your breath, notice your own life force, especially if something comes up for you as we're having these conversations about what's going on with our relationship with food. So this is our second, the Empowered Woman Presents Wise Wisdom Holders. And tonight we will be in conversation with Amber Roniger and about her Radiant Health Reboot. And she will present information to us, as well as we will have a dialogue about our experience around food, whether it's allergies, addictions, emotional numbing, body dysmorphic stories, patterns that have been really dictating your relationship with food, and being able to rebuild that and have a sustainable, healthy relationship with food. And so there's a lot of, we have to eat, right? And our most basic sustenance is what? What are we eating? Do we even know what to eat? What's going on in our body? What is our body telling us, right? And as you'll hear from me tonight, I am going to be really vulnerable and really raw about what I've been doing with Amber and what's been coming up about my work with her around food, whether it's been addictive patterns, withholding, binging, overeating, and really wanting to get to a place of just my power, right? That's what the empowered woman or the empowered approach is all about, is about how do I feed myself, right? How do we feed ourselves? And tonight it's going to be specifically about food, right? And the energy around food and the struggles that we have around food and the confusion we have around food. How much to eat? What do we, how much to eat? What are we eating? Does it feel good in our body? Do we shame ourselves from it? And I'll share a little bit, like I can eat a pound of candy, right? I've been able to eat a pound of candy, but I can't eat a whole avocado without feeling bad because it has too much fat in it. I mean, that sounds illogical, but that is really true. Like, that's what I really want to dig down inside with all of you tonight and talk about what it means to be your empowered person, right? And I'm going to share about that in a follow-up email about the work that I do. And Amber's going to share about the work that she's doing, and the combination of both of them. And it's really exciting to talk about this. It's exciting to talk about the things that we hold to be shame, that we hold to be like guilt, or that we're hard on ourselves about. It's really important that this conversation happens and that we are not afraid to talk about it, because it holds us back from having the kind of relationship we want to have with food. And it's really, really important. So Amber is going to go through, I believe, slides and her presentation of it. And then we're going to go into a conversation about it. And I want all of you that are on the Zoom, if you have questions, please put it in the box. We will take a pause and we will answer them. If something comes up, like, this is interactive. This isn't just about us talking about it. I want you to be able to be like, wow, that's happened to me, or at least chat in it and say, I get that. Or, hey, I this is what's going on for me right now. And at the end, we'll talk more about what is it that you need and how this can be supportive to you. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Amber, you are on.
Hi. Thank you, Cindy. So yes, I played my little toxic intro with Brittany. That's my theme song. And I just want to say I haven't presented this information in this way or in such a cohesive or synthesized way. So if I make mistakes or I fumble a little, please just be a little patient with me. It's my first time, and I'm bringing together a lot of thoughts that I've been having for quite some time. And this gave me a really beautiful opportunity to put it together in a presentable way. So hopefully it is.
Let me just say one more thing with that. And what we're talking about is food, but we're also talking about mind training. We're also talking about mindfulness. We're also talking about all things that have to do with our mind that connects to our body.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I forgot to say that.
No, yes, thank you. And like I said, I'll try to put this together in a way that makes sense, but we'll do our best. So I do have some slides. They're very simple, just kind of visual ideas, and I'll kind of go back and forth between them. So give me 1 second. Who am I? I'm figuring that out, but for all intents and purposes, I'm Amber Roniger. And so I'm just trying to share some insights and wisdom that I've gathered my personal path to radiant health. And I would say I approach this from a somewhat unique perspective. I'm calling it dharma+diet. And I've really been over and over these words because diet has such a negative connotation for us and for Westerners, but diet really is what you take in. And so it keeps coming back to me, dharma+diet. So that's somewhat of my personal philosophy. And dharma is seen through the lens of my Buddhist teaching. So dharma is the path or the way or the teachings. So I'm a Buddhist, but I'll talk more about terms in a little bit. I've been a practicing Buddhist for 7 years, and I've done a lot of traditional practices. That's why I moved to Woodstock to be near the monastery. But I've also done some non-traditional practices. So when I say non-traditional, that's the Tara dancing that I'll be talking about, but more on this later. So I want to talk about why I'm here. So in Buddhist practice, we always establish our motivation. So why am I here? I'm here because Cindy so graciously brought me here because she thought I would have some wisdom that can maybe benefit other people. So I hope I do. And then I'm here because she was brave enough to step forth and decide to work with me, even though this is bringing many disparate things together for me. So thank you, Cindy, for your bravery and your honesty and allowing me to really figure out what this is and how I can help people. But in a broader sense, so that's sort of like the immediate sense of why I'm here, but in a broader sense, why I'm here is it's a lot to do with the foods I've been eating my whole life and the negative impact that they've had on me. I would say on me, but I would say body, speech, and mind. So in Buddhism, we talk about body, speech, and mind. This is our body, and our speech comes from here in our mind. So it's really having a negative impact on me in so many ways that I didn't even understand. And the more I research it now, I'm starting to get a small grasp, I think, on really how profound it was. But it's fascinating to me how many people have a troubled relationship with food. It's probably the vast majority of us. I wouldn't even know how to assess something like that. But the more I look at it, the more I'm amazed at how deep and rich this subject is for myself and those who I talk to. So I would say next slide. So next slide. Yes. So dharma+diet. This is me. This is me doing Tara dancing actually last year. So why am I here? After a lifetime of suffering from, I'm just going to read the list that I wrote here: food allergies, inflammation, weight gain, emotional eating, binge eating, skin eruptions, depression, physical pain, poor digestion, and other residual effects of a lifelong abusive relationship with food. And yes, I call it an abusive relationship because I love it, but it didn't love me. And so at some point you have to cut your losses and say, this is really harming me and I need to extricate myself, make space. So just like a negative personal relationship, same thing, you need to take space. So 2 years ago I took control. That's how I came to be here. And I've never looked back. Once I decided I was going to go on this journey, I've done it 100%. So that's where Cindy and I definitely see eye to eye. Cindy's a fuck yeah girl, and she only does things that are fuck yeah, and she only does things with people that are fuck yeah. And so I was a big fuck yeah, pardon my French, but at this moment, I'm on day 17 of a liquid only cleanse. I'm doing 30 days. I've been up since 5 this morning. I've been working all day. I had a lunch date. I don't drink caffeine. You know, I got a ton of energy. So I'm kind of the proof that this lifestyle is miraculous, really, in many senses of the word. So this is how I looked 2 years ago. This is before I began to cleanse. And when I say cleanse, I began to cleanse my body with the help of the whole life elimination diet. I'll keep referring to that. This is the dietary plan that I use. I call it the most reasonable, logical, easy to follow 3-part plan that you've never heard of, right? So first of all, the life elimination diet, it's the worst marketing, right? It has diet. It just doesn't sound appealing, but it's so simple. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So this diet plan, this nutritionary plan was prescribed to me by my naturopath, Dr. Eli, to combat a host of lifelong issues. And many were tracing back to my earliest childhood. I was allergic to dairy. And they put me on soy, which I'm also allergic to. Then they put me back on dairy at age 5. So it was sort of a litany of different dietary issues. But I wouldn't have pointed my skin issues as dietary at the time. Maybe the doctor did, but it took me a long time to really understand. But so the whole life elimination diet, in a nutshell, what is it? It's this process of self-discovery, right? So it's very much like the Dharma. It's using science and nature. It's using information and experience to empower yourself, and then chart a course forward, but be ready to zig and zag and move with it and go with the flow, right? And so understand that this is not linear, it's cyclical, and sometimes we revisit where we came from, and not to have emotion about that, just to take it in stride, not to have attachment to that. So
Amber, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, of course.
So as I look at this picture of you, like, so my story, and we're going to go into that a little bit, is my experience with food is very different than your experience with food. I don't have a lot of allergies, and I didn't have a lot of inflammation. I have a lot of emotional, dysmorphic addiction and things like that. So, and we're going to talk about the differences, is why it's been so helpful to work with you. Is when I look at you in this picture, you can literally see your inflammation. You can see what's going on in your body, that it doesn't even look like you. It just looks like layers on top of you. So I just wanted to point that out, because there are people on this call that may have some of what I have, but they also may not even know that they have allergies, or that there is inflammation in their body that they're unaware of, that the foods that they're eating is actually poisoning them. And unless they eliminate that, which is what this process is of cleansing, where you're not just drinking juice, but you're making beautiful soups, and you're making beautiful smoothies, and you're having vegetables and fruit and all sorts of stuff, specifics, which you're going to get into, but you may not even know that this is going on for you. And so if anyone feels that they might have some inflammation or allergies or emotional stuff, and you want to write it, whether you're on the live or whether you're in the Zoom, just write it down, kind of shout it out there, so that we can kind of talk to those points as we move forward on this call.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And please feel free to chime in, or anybody who would like to. Actually, it's funny, when I presented this in February in Woodstock, Cindy was doing this, looking up at the screen. She's like, I didn't know it was you. And I just want to say that physically, like the way I look, all this happened in about a month. It was so dramatic, and it was so fast, and it was so immediate. And the majority of it has been maintenance, and then really deciding what I want to do and how I want to be and how I want to go forward. So it's been a fascinating journey. So I think, so just to break down, like, very simply, sort of what the whole life elimination diet is. It's a 3-part plan. Phase 1 is liquid only. So it's smoothies, juices, and soups that you make yourself, nothing processed, right? Everything's blended to aid in the digestion, and it's very gentle. And they recommend doing this 2 to 3 days or as needed, right? So this is just rebooting your computer, starting at ground zero. Especially someone like me who wants to assess allergies, it's really useful to clean your house out and then add things back and see what's going on. And that's exactly what this does. So I decided I would do this for 30 days. I told my naturopath I would do it for 2 weeks because I didn't know if he would approve, but somehow I knew intuitively I needed 30 days, which I did. And I did it to the letter. It was absolutely amazing. And I was able to travel at the time and there were no issues at all. I could be social and go out. I found a way. And then phase 2 is you're chewing again, but it has out still the majority of or all of the common allergens. So soy, tree nuts, coffee, alcohol. So there's a yes and no list. So you phase things in and out. So phase 2 is very simple. It's chewing. They say about 2 weeks. I stayed there for 1 year, actually. And then I slowly, phase 3, you start one by one, scientifically logging and adding back foods that you suspect you may have an allergy to or some kind of sensitivity. And then you're logging the results and you see, is it the food overall? Is it a certain amount? So you just figure out what your body can tolerate and what you want to do with that information. So it took me a year to enter into phase 3. And, but now I'm back in phase 1 because it's not linear. And I want to continue the work that I did starting exactly 2 years ago, which was I dropped a lot of weight and a lot of attachment in my mind, but this is really about detoxing now. So it's not about weight. I don't need to drop weight anymore. And being very mindful of what I'm doing and why. And I want to just say that I think that this diet, this plan appeals to me so much because it's just like Dharma. It's empowerment and it's learning to fix it. And it's also like feng shui, right? So you take everything out, you clean everything, and then you mindfully, one by one, put things back in and see if it serves you, right? So there's so many philosophical ways to understand this diet. For me, Dharma works. But I think people, do whatever works for them. So
can you explain Dharma? Can you speak of Dharma?
Yes. So that I was going to get to later, but I'm going to start now because I will define my terms. So I'll just skip ahead. Like Dharma is the path or the way, or the teachings. There are different ways to interpret it, but for Buddhists, the Dharma is the teaching. So we have the 3 jewels in Buddhism. And when I say Buddhism, forgive me, it's my lineage, my Karma Kagyu lineage. I'll kind of skip ahead here. So Karma Kagyu Tibetan Buddhist lineage, and we're Vajra Buddhist. So this means that we practice to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So the idea is no one leaves the samsara or the suffering until we are all enlightened. And so Dharma is just my lens or my way of processing things. And so I think that's why, because I had such a strong Dharma practice, I didn't even realize how much that discipline and devotion was really aiding me until much later. I'm really looking and saying, why did this work so well for me? And what are the seeds of accomplishment? And how can I replicate this for other people? So I'm really putting my finger on my Dharma practice and my daily practice as a very key element.
So I want to speak on that for a second, okay? Because I think this is really important of the work and working with you and really forming this relationship with you, because I have a lot of different mind training in all sorts of ways, but when it comes to food, I haven't yet. I've just begun the path. And what has come up for me that I learned from you is discipline. What is discipline? I could tell myself a story that I lack discipline in different areas of my life, but it's pretty bullshit because I have a lot of discipline in a lot of areas of my life. This is just one area that I'm working on, and you have that. You are embodied of that kind of practice that makes me want more of that. I crave it. And so being around you and talking with you and logging my food and understanding, or not logging my food because I'm afraid to tell you what I ate, right? Because I'm not perfect. Oh my God, right? You're all going to know that you're not perfect, right? Especially if we have that perfect thing going, or that we have to look a certain way, or it has to be this way. And it's not like that. It's just being able to say, hey, this is what's going on for me because this is what's coming up. But what I keep coming back to is your discipline, your Dharma, your practice, your mind training. And I'm so excited for everybody to hear about your practices around that, because you just said it. You just said that you didn't, like, it's all come to you from all your practices. And now look where you're at because of it. And I want more of that. I mean, who wants more of that? Who wants to be able to have more discipline? right? And not this kind of like, I look at discipline, I found a meaning that discipline is the disciple of oneself, right? Where I am my disciple and that I have this choice and I am empowered enough to make these choices. And I'm working through the emotional stuff that keeps me moving back towards the same pattern. So I think it's really, really important that people know that this is the work that you do, that you walk and talk it. It's all really real.
Yeah, girl. It is all really real.
Yeah.
And this is why, you know, I've been practicing this way of eating now for 2 years, and mostly quietly. Of course, people say, oh, what are you doing? But they're not that interested. You know, they want a magic pill, or they just want to know that it's too hard for them to do it. They don't want to really know, actually, I can totally empower you to do this. Right. So it's been a fascinating journey. But I wasn't going to share it until I was ready and in the right way. And you really gave me that opportunity because you believe in this, you know? So thank you. It's really cool. So I'm going to backslide, if you don't mind. Backslide, I would say, go back. Okay. So I just want to read all of the stuff that's on here. This is obviously a recent picture. Cindy took this. We were hiking this weekend. And yeah, things are nice right now. So the whole life elimination diet was prescribed by my naturopath. Thank you, Dr. Eli. Thank you forever. To naturally combat lifelong symptoms and allergic reactions relating to food. So if you can relate to this, give a who or a ha, or just kind of nod your head. Gastric discomfort, including gas and bloating. This was so major for me. I just had no idea. I thought it was normal. Acne and skin problems. This has been the bane of my life. And even much more so than saying, I'm a picky eater, I have food problems. I would identify skin problems. And I believe the vast majority, if not all of them, stem from the food that I was eating. And I would scratch my scalp when I was a kid so bad, like it would be infected. I mean, like to horrible pain and infection. And then as I got older, increasing weight gain and inflammation, but not really being able to pinpoint the source. Sometimes I would stumble upon the right thing and I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I would go right back to how I was. And discontent, sadness, or anxiety, which we know can be caused by food, and it can be a real spiral. As a kid, some of the things I'd experienced, recurring strep throat. And this, I believe, was from having the dairy allergy and eating dairy, and then the mucus it formed, and then the inflammation. So it was a bad domino effect. Recurring strep throat, recurring ear infection so serious I was days away from surgery, serious potentially life-threatening skin ailments that need antibiotics to be treated. So me in my past life, gone, you know. Pityriasis, rosacea, recurring impetigo, full body hives from generic laundry detergent and bug bites from not even touching it. So, and honestly, I thought this was normal. I didn't know. And then you just think that you're a complete anomaly. And then the truth is somewhere in the middle. It turns out that I'm a type. I'm a skin type. I'm a histamine sensitive skin type. And the way that Dr. Eli described it to me is people like me don't have a very stable barrier between their internal and external worlds. And so we have to do a lot to strengthen that barrier, which made a lot of sense to me. And describes a lot how I am. I'm very sensitive. So then I want to say that in addition to all these sort of excellent and wonderful things happening, some very unexpected things happen. But I just want to mention, because it's too obvious, that I think we all realize that prevention and good health in the age of COVID is like the most important thing you could do for yourself and everyone around you. It's so paramount to keep our immune system high. And this way of living with the body, speech, and mind, not just through the food, but through the daily spiritual practice, I think is so essential to being able to do that. I'm not saying don't get vaccinated. I'm not saying don't practice social distancing. I'm saying do everything you can to boost your health naturally. Your body will thank you. But the really big unexpected thing that happened to me 2 years ago was my spiritual practice went through the roof when I changed my way of eating. So I think there's two main reasons for this, although I'm sure there's many more that I don't understand yet. One of which is we know that fasting is tied to spiritual practice, right? It's tied to yoga, it's tied to pranayama, it's tied to prostrations for Buddhists and extended pujas. And for any of us who have fasted or done anything like that, we feel light, we feel bright. I haven't chewed in 17 days. I've been up, working for 14 hours, you're on a high and you don't feel like your feet are touching the ground, and everyone notices it. It's stunning. But the second truly unexpected thing was my digestion was so good and I needed so much less sleep that I was up at 4 a.m, empty colon and total energy, completely clear and ready to rock. Not like I want to slumber back into bed. And I woke up filled with energy. And I think I didn't realize that I'd been waking up tired probably for most of my life, as many of us have. So in a pragmatic way, I was up at 4, my colon was empty. I was training a Tara dancer at 5, and I was up at the monastery at 6 for Tara Puja. And then I would come back and still had time to do things before work, right? So there are a lot of pragmatic reasons that getting your body in order will or can lead to increased spiritual practice, if that's how you want to spend your time, but you'll definitely have more time. And if you want to spend it well, then it's a really exciting time for you. And I call this effortless effort, right? It's not that like, I haven't worked today. I put out a lot of effort, but it's effortless. I'm not dragging myself around. I'm not fighting with myself. There's no inner monologue, it's effortless effort. I'm just doing it. And for any of us who have struggled with depression or anything else, you know the difference. There's a real difference when life is flowing, and it's not subtle. So, and then
I want to interject one thing here. So for anybody that is in recovery, or anyone that knows anybody that's in recovery, when we get off of drugs and alcohol, we are craving very specific food, and being able to have this mindfulness around food and the things that we actually need to cut those cravings will actually also take away the cravings of that drug or the booze that you were craving because of all the sugar that was in it. Like, I know there's certain, like, lettuce is really good for heroin, and like there's all this different stuff, and there's so much available to us. So doing something like this also allows you to see, or if you know people, it allows us to see how food is impacting our other addictions. It's really important because I've had them and I still find those cravings. I still have those. And I had a craving for candy. After 9 months, I put candy in my mouth and I lost a tooth. I literally lost a tooth. So obviously I shouldn't be eating candy, right? It's not good for me. I know it's not good for me, but I had that craving again. And so I gave in to that craving and I cracked my tooth. I lost my tooth. So it's really important to figure out and to really dive into the possibility of what are we really craving? What are we really craving? Really important. So I just wanted to speak on that.
Yeah, and I want to say that it was so profound to sort of zero out my cravings when I did the 30-day cleanse. It was so profound. And it's not something that I struggle with anymore. And now if my body is craving something, I really say, oh, my period's probably coming, or, there's a reason, and I look at it. I don't have such a knee-jerk emotional reaction to it. So it's really useful to put the science into food and try to take the emotion out, not to negate the emotion, right? We're going to look at that and we're going to solve it and we're going to move through it, but not to give over and be attached to it, because that can really short circuit us, even really good progress.
And also cleanse. I just want to specify cleanse. I think of cleanse, I think of like juicing and withholding food and not getting a lot of food. So when we email you this whole foods elimination diet, you're going to actually see what you can eat, which is a lot, right? So I just want to make sure that the story around what a cleanse is, or if there's a trigger around the word cleanse, it may not be anything that you have ever done before, because this is about healthy whole foods, right? So I just want to put that out there.
Yes. Yeah, this is not starving. This is nutrifying. So this is like a huge injection of nutrients in organic food and what your body craves. So yeah, this really did do a huge number on me for cravings, but I've also found things along the way that help. So if something comes up, I kind of know how to counteract it. And that's like where the wisdom is gathering, the experience and the wisdom and trusting myself. So even though I had, wonderful success, this wasn't like, oh, it all happened and, end of story. So I still had lingering skin issues that I was trying to figure out. So I went back to Dr. Eli and he basically said, elimination diet your skin. So, right, it's this philosophy of using ourself as the experiment, as the physician, as the lab, right? So it's very meta. We're putting ourselves in sort of all ways of looking this and trying to understand what's going on with ourselves. So I didn't quite figure it out at the time, but it did get me thinking along the right journey. And about 8 months after, I went to Costa Rica, and I was staying with, some of you maybe saw Jasmine's talk, which was wonderful. So she's a huge proponent. She's a registered nurse of enemas. And I had done little ones to myself, but never done like a full colonic. I'd never gotten it done. So down in Costa Rica, I had it done twice. And she said to zero yourself out, just like the elimination diet, it's really important. It can get rid of so many lifelong issues, stuff that's been building up inside you. So these two colonics, this was profound. This was profound. And I started really taking cleansing seriously. Right, so we have the nutrifying and we have the cleansing, both of which are absolutely essential. It's made me look further into what does it mean to cleanse. So my skin is this huge organ that's used for elimination that I completely ignore. So now I do skin brushing. So right, understanding that there are other ways to aid my overall radiant health that are so obvious and are right there and are so natural, but most people don't do. And they feel so good. To skin brush in the morning before a shower is just like so glorious. And you might think, oh, my skin's sensitive, it's going to give issues, but actually it takes away the issues. It's like the opposite of what you think it's going to be. It slowly like sloughs it off. So I really recommend it for people. And it gets your lymphatic system going in a really profound way. So, and all this is to say that all these things that have worked for me, I'm now going back and educating myself about why does this work so well? So before it was just like, it worked. I'm so psyched. I could, recommend it to other people, but now I'm going and researching this and trying to really understand this. For example, both winters now, my weight spiked up, right? So when I came back from Costa Rica, boom, it was winter. Same with this, like could go up 15 pounds. And instead of freaking out, I'm like, okay, I see it's having a reaction. It wants to be warm. It's trying to insulate. I need to compensate in this or that way. And I know what to do. No problem. No problem at all. But also because I didn't have an emotional reaction, I just thought, okay, I got this. Let me just use the science, what I've learned about myself, and apply it. And so it works. It didn't just work one time. It wasn't random. It wasn't a fluke. It's science in nature. And it works. So remember, this journey is not linear. Try not to attach to either extreme of emotion. So work through non-attachment, which is another big Dharma principle. For example, in one day, when all of this had happened, in one day, within 1 hour, someone told me, you look so gorgeous, so radiant. And then someone else asked me if I had cancer and told me this is so terrible and it's too much, right? And so the lesson here is don't attach. I'm neither of those things. I'm both of those things. Middle road, right? Strive for the middle road. And this is where my Dharma training really comes into play, because I'm like, thank you very much. I remove myself from the person who thinks I have cancer, and no problem.
Okay, so I'm going to talk on that, because that's where I have had a lot of emotional attachment, and this is part of my moving through all this, where one day 3 people told me they want my abs, which I used to be really, I used to cut my stomach. I used to punch my stomach because I hated my belly, just hated it. It felt horrible all the time about it. I was very self-deprecating there. And here's someone 3 people say, oh my God, I want your abs. And then the next moment, 3 people call me skinny, and I am totally triggered by it, that I start overeating after that because I internalized it. And that was really hard to actually remove. And now I have, but it's been really interesting, where all my mind training has been for other things, but this is a whole new paradigm for me to really shapeshift those patterns. So I wanted to share that because you were so amazing through that, and so supportive through that, where I just shut down. I shut down and I don't want to talk about it. And I have shame and I don't want to be seen. I'm not perfect. I'm messy. There's so much that went on for me within like 7 days. I felt so incredible. And like how you talk about the fluctuation, how it's okay. And I'm like, it has never been okay for me because of my patterns around it. So I just wanted to share my perspective on that, because people on here or people that are listening, everyone has a different perspective around that. And that's why mind training is so important. So what did I do? I've up-leveled my meditation. I've up-leveled my visualization. I've up-leveled quieting down, releasing the shame that I hold or the story that I've been telling myself for 40 years, since I'm 10 or 12 or whatever it is, right? So yeah, so that was another incredible gift of who you are, and that you have this, I don't know, it's not just embodiment. It's like this, I know, this grounding within yourself to be able to support this kind of this for me. It's kind of like, right? Because it was like that. It was, whoo. And the fluctuation of weight. I've never been a weight person, never had a scale. I bought a scale. And it doesn't matter what I went, but I went up and down within 10 pounds, which I'm like, whoa. And it's not just 10 pounds of, okay, this is a lot of overeating, one binge, is like, okay, this is the work. Like, this is the work. What am I doing? Going inward and learning and growing and dancing and moving it. So it was interesting. It was really, really interesting. And I'm grateful for the experience to have to go through it.
This monk that I showed before, one practitioner stood up in front of him, a whole shrine full of people, and said, oh, Rinpoche, I haven't practiced in months. And he laughed and he said, sometimes your stock is up, sometimes your stock is down, right? So she's hating herself and castigating herself. And this high Lama is like, I love you, and you're a wonderful practitioner, and this is normal, right? And so I say the same to you, but this is also, and I'm going to start getting into defining some Buddhist terms, but where it's really useful to be Buddhist. Because when you believe in reincarnation, it's okay. There's no YOLO. There's none of this destructive, you only live once. There's none of this idea that I fucked it up and that's it and I can never repair it. No, that's not what reincarnation tells us. And that's not what karma tells us. And those are the two things that you need. You may be a Buddhist if you believe in those two things, right? So it's very comforting for me. It was very comforting to realize I was Buddhist, because I didn't have to be perfect and I didn't have to do it all now. And I know I have millions of lifetimes to fuck it up, and I'm okay with that, right? So on both sides of the coin. So yeah, I want to get into a little bit of like why this has worked so well for me, and like how did I manifest this good fortune, right? So the wisdom of the three jewels, maybe some of you have heard of this. So the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? So these are the three crucial components to having a successful life in spiritual practice. So Buddha is the teacher, the enlightened one, your guide, your spiritual friend. For me, that was Dr. Eli. The Dharma is the teaching, the way, the path. So for me, that was the whole life elimination diet plus my Dharma teachings. And then the Sangha is the spiritual community. So that is the Tara dancers that I dance with and people who support me. They don't need to know that I'm doing a dietary thing to support me as a human being and my radiant health. And so that held me up. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. So this is me as a young person. I had inflammation. I had no idea. I wouldn't have known the word for this. Everyone said, oh, you have such big cheeks. When I was a baby and I was allergic to mama's milk, I looked like a little Tibetan baby with scarlet glowing, right? And then here, inflammation, although I'm very young, you can definitely see the inflammation if you compare to the way I look now. But interestingly, when I was young, I had such a severe aversion to spices that I would choose to starve instead of eating it. And in fact, I'm so incredibly allergic to spices. And one of the things that made me look like that other picture is I was eating an enormous amount of nightshades and spices. It was harming me so bad. And so the truth is, if I had stayed with that inner wisdom that told me not to do that and to fast instead, right, I would probably have been on a better path. But so all these other things that I've already read out were happening, and to more or less degrees when I was young. But when you're young, you can keep it at bay. I was very active. I was very athletic. Sometimes I'd stumble upon something, take out an allergen, not knowing, and things would go right and then they go wrong. So very much of a yo-yo. And I think I said before, it's funny, looking back, I don't consider myself a picky eater. I would say more like I had skin problems, but it's all centered around food, right? And so in the early 70s, I was on soy. I don't know if it was genetically modified then. I don't know how dirty it was, but knowing now that I have an allergy to it and it's been building up in my system that long. And when I became vegetarian and vegan, I was eating so much of it. This is why I needed to cleanse, and I will never go back to it. But at age 5, they put me back on dairy, and it was like being force-fed. I had such an aversion to it. I had to choke it down. It was actually absolutely revolting to me. When I was about 4, I realized what chopped liver was and tongue, and stopped eating that. So I was starting to have realizations about food at a young age, but I didn't have any support or words for it, or any knowledge or any idea of why these things were happening, or I didn't want these things, right? So at age 14, I became a vegetarian. Somewhere along the line, I became mostly vegan. And then for 10 years now, I've been very hardcore vegan. But this was not enough to counteract what was happening to me, right? So I'm eating mostly organic, I'm vegan 100%. Not really junk food, but I do. But I'm eating things that are harming me. So I am just experiencing inflammation and weight gain, and I just don't know why. And I'm thinking I'm doing all the right things. In fact, doing all the wrong things. I'm eating the wrong food in the wrong amount at the wrong time for my body, right? For my body. So yes, living to eat, right? So as Cindy said, it's like I'm on this path of self-discovery of how important food is. I didn't put this all together. I wasn't sitting and trying to be philosophical about it, but the more I look at it, it's so rich, it's so meaningful, it's so deep, and every culture has so many rituals and traditions around food, right? And it's such an intimate act of what we're doing. So it's really a wonder that we don't pay more attention to it. It's kind of baffling and mysterious, actually. Presumably we eat several times a day, every day for our entire life. We should be experts on this, right? We should know exactly what's going on and why. And it's like, we're clueless. It's bizarre. It's fascinating. And I include myself in that, as absolutely fumbling around for the majority of my life. So yeah, some of the things that Cindy said, and I want to read this out again, she touched on it, and I didn't realize how profound this was, and getting to work with her is showing me how deep this subject is, right? So how many of us struggle daily with a host of obstacles relating to food? Confusion about what, how much or when to eat, feelings of guilt, shame, or inadequacy, numbness or suppressing emotions, emotional binge or overeating, a host of illnesses, diseases, even causing death. Right? So it's such a deep and profound subject. And so we need to dig into this relationship, body, speech, and mind, right? So we talk about this in Buddhism, body, speech, and mind. And why are we doing this? We want to name it. We want to shed light on it. We want to bring awareness to these problems. In Buddhism, we talk about obstacles, and we're not trying to smash them or destroy them. We're not trying to ignore them or go around them. We're trying to go through them and dissolve them. So how do we do that? We shed light on them. We discuss them, we bring it to the Sangha, and we slowly uproot the cause of our suffering, and we hopefully heal it. So I was going to do a little Buddhism primer, but I've already been doing that. So I've talked about what's Dharma. I've talked about my lineage, how we dissolve problems. Oh, so the one thing is, so in Dharma, we work with wisdom and method. And so this is also a beautiful example of interdependence, right? So wisdom and method, like the two sides of my hand, one does not exist independent of the other. So any obstacle or problem that we approach from two-pronged, both wisdom and method. And the whole life elimination diet is exactly like this, right? So it takes out the common allergens, but then it puts in things that decrease inflammation. It's a 1-2 punch all the time, right? So you're always working from multiple angles to get really good benefit and see what's the best for you. So I want to talk just like a teeny little bit about Tara dancing. This is what you see here. So Tara dancing for me is a method. I talk about wisdom and method. This for me is a method of engendering discipline and daily practice, gathering a supportive Sangha, some of whom are interested in this topic, but just in general, a place where we can share wisdom, set motivation, and dedicate the merit of our practice. And I lead dancing every day. We have a Sangha. I'll talk a little bit about that, and it's open to everyone. So to anyone who this could be a useful vehicle or tool or technique, this is always going to be open to everyone. This is my public service, and I'll do it as long as I can. So I talked a little about karma and reincarnation. So karma, people misunderstand this, and there's different kinds of karma, but it's basically our actions. It's the result of our actions, the sum cause of our actions, right? So cause, condition, and effect. So in science and Western methodology, we talk about cause and effect, but dharma as in condition, right? So it shows that we have an extra degree of control over what happens, right? So again, with the threes, and there are many ways in which to change our karma, past, present, and future. And it shows that it's nonlinear. And so you do have a chance to fuck it up and do it all over, confess, and it's no problem. This is normal, it's human. So 3 jewels, I talked a little bit about the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, but I'll also say that with the 3 jewels, we have outer, inner, and secret. So this is why we could take a practice like the tar dance, and we do the same thing every day. It's extremely simple practice, but we can go deeper. Right? So there's outer, inner, and secret meanings. So I could expand my repertoire and endlessly try to do many different things, or I could choose one thing and go very deep. So my Rinpoche, who died, he said, if you ever want to make it to the ocean, pick one stream and drink deeply, right? So what does this mean? The ocean is enlightenment. Every wisdom path is good. It doesn't matter which one you pick, but pick one, drink deeply, and ride that stream all the way. If you drink from many streams, you won't get to the ocean. So ride whatever vehicle works for you, but drink deeply. And this is the essence of this daily practice and this repetition. And the beauty in the discipline, right? So I think I'm a strange person. And when I look back on myself, I would do, weird things like at day camp, everyone's out there in their free period and I'm swimming 100 laps before lunch. Like, why did I do these things? Or train myself in gymnastics? I can't explain it. Buddhists would say it's the resonance of past practice that is making it so easy for me. But for whatever reason, discipline is really the seat of being successful. And so whatever practice you love, do that. For me, it's tar dancing, it works, but find it and do it. It's really going to support keeping good nutrition and making your precious body as wonderful as it can be. So let's see, karma. Oh yes, okay, so I said, I've never presented this information quite like this, and this is very true. I've been slowly synthesizing this and bringing it together, right? So in my lineage, one of the first things we do is we meditate on the 4 thoughts that turn the mind away from samsara. So we're turning the dharma wheel, we're turning the wheel. And samsara is the suffering. So we're turning the mind away from samsara. So that means continually. It doesn't mean I got it and hey, and I'm enlightened, it's all good. It means, oh, I got distracted this moment. Oh, turn the mind back. So just remembering, turn the mind back, turn the mind away from suffering. This is our work and this is very good. If we can remember to do this, we're doing really well, right? So what's the first of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind away from suffering is precious human rebirth. So this is talking about reincarnation in a human body. So being in a human body is essential for practicing dharma, which hopefully will lead to enlightenment. So the likelihood of being born into a human body is so incredibly rare. To be born in a human body where you can practice dharma. And the things, death is lapping at our heels all the time. Every time we walk outside, get in our car, it's lapping at our heels. It takes so much determination to cling to life. And it's so important to meditate on it. And this is why it's the first of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. And the second is contemplating death and impermanence, right? So these first 2 crucial thoughts are about our precious human body. Because without this precious human body, we're not on this earth. And we can't practice dharma and we can't attain enlightenment. So it is literally the first thing we have to do is look at our health, the physical health of our body, because without that, our mind is bothered. And with an unstable mind, we can't practice dharma and we can't work to attain enlightenment. And so it should be the first step for all of us. And it was for me, even though I didn't notice it and I couldn't put that language to it. And maybe it kind of went out of order, but now that I get it, I'm like, hey, we can do this. We can do this mindfully and build it this way. The third of the 4 thoughts is about karmic actions. And the 4th is how to transcend the suffering. So these are some of the really basic dharmic principles. And you see that this precious human body and how we're here on this earth is the most essential and crucial link to attaining enlightenment. It seems ironic because we think of enlightenment as being without a body. But if we're going to keep coming back and helping others to achieve enlightenment, we must keep coming back in this body to this plane, if you believe in that kind of thing. And there are many ways to understand this. And so mindfulness is so important, right? And so it's kind of everything, actually. It's not only so important, it's kind of like the whole crux of this. So one thing I said to Cindy was, what's the difference between binging and purging? So binging and purging, meaning binging and starving yourself, or fasting for a day, right? So what is the difference? It's all our mind, right? So it's all planning, discipline, and awareness. So without discipline, awareness, and planning, I overate, I binge ate, and now I feel guilty, I feel shameful, maybe I'm throwing up, maybe I'm doing things that harm myself, I'm starving myself. But if I know I'm going out for dinner and I'm going to eat a big meal, and I cleanse or I fast throughout the day mindfully and make a plan of when I'm going to eat and then when I'll eat next, right? So now we've turned the whole thing 180, and we've helped our body instead of hindered it, right? So
that was a huge, like, mind blown moment for me, where I have done so much withholding and so much of, I wasn't really a big purger. I had gone through stages of it, but a binge eater where I'd buy $50 worth of food, $100 worth of food, and eat it all, and be really sick, right? But the thought of actually doing it healthy just actually didn't make sense to me. What do you mean you can do it in a healthy way? What do you mean you could do it in a mindful way? I really didn't understand that. And I don't even think I still understand it, because the patterns are so they're so embedded in me that it's hard to comprehend. Plus I feel things and I need to feel that through my body. And I still don't, my body doesn't understand that that's even how, that's even a possibility for me. So I'm still really kind of working with that. So I love that you just mentioned that, because to be able to shift that way of thinking, right? To be able to see it as something really beautiful and nurturing for my body, where it doesn't have to be hurtful and abusive. Wow. Wow. It's totally changing a relationship to food by thinking that way.
Yeah. Yeah. The awareness is everything. And that's why I really think this Dharma practice or some kind of philosophy is such an enormous aid in being successful and sticking to a diet or whatever it is to achieve whatever your goals are. So yeah, some more unflattering pictures of me. I was in a toxic relationship. So I told him, I need help. You know, I want to see a naturopath, I want to see a nutritionist. And he was so unsupportive, so negative about it. And so I had to leave this toxic relationship, excuse me, before I could detox on my own. So where our mind is, who we're spending time with, our immediate surroundings are so important. But you can see here, if you could see in the upper right, so I've been a natural athlete my whole life. So even 50 pounds heavier, I could do headstand, I could do scorpion, I could do all the things, I could, my leg here and there, but it wasn't enough, right? It wasn't enough to keep the inflammation at bay, even being able to do all these things and impress people. But now I could do things I could do as a teenager just because the bulk is gone from my body. So the natural, you know, ability to stretch and be flexible was there, but my physical body was hindering it. And so it's amazing to be back in maybe the body that you had before, maybe the body I really never had. So I want to say too, I was so lucky to not fall down the online rabbit hole of like dieting and marketing and all these scams that are out there. Once I got out of this relationship, I decided I was going to seek professional help. And I found the one person that was available in my small town, who's not a nutritionist, but a naturopath. I didn't know what that was. But I was lucky. I found a compassionate professional to work with me. And I needed that accountability. I didn't know that, but it turned out to be all that I needed. And the third time he saw me, he said, I don't need to see you again. You know, so you need to find someone compassionate and honest who really wants to help you and not try to take your money. And then it's amazing. He was like, go away, come back if you need me, you know, email me. So I trusted my wisdom, and I'm so glad that I did. So yes, more unflattering pictures. And understanding now So I lost weight. So many wonderful things happened for me 2 years ago, and I have been able to maintain it and understand how to do that. But now back in phase one, I'm shedding the extra toxicity that my body held on to that it didn't shed before. I think the amount of weight, what I did before was absolutely right. It was the way it happened, where I rested, the way I've been able to maintain it, allow my body to re-equalize. And now it's time to take it to that next level. It just feels natural. It just feels right. And so I can feel my body changing. I'm getting smaller, even though my weight's not changing much. So it's interesting how when we're mindful of what we want to happen, our bodies really can do that. So much of that is that mind training and just being focused and aware. So yes, research yourself every day. So this is something that one of my first monks told me, but this is what Dharma is. This is the essence of Dharma. So research yourself every day. Be honest. Ask yourself how you feel, but you don't have to be emotional, right? So how do I feel? And that's information, and then act on it. And it should change your course forward. That's how you change your karma, right? So when I got out of the relationship, I found the right person. I went 100% in the right direction. I've never looked back. I didn't self-sabotage, right? But I think that was because of understanding karma, interdependence, self-compassion, and these Dharma teachings, right? But now I'm really looking at it. So hopefully I can bestow some of that wisdom. So I asked one of my lamas, why do monastics, why don't you have sex? What's the deal? Why don't monastics have sex? He said, it's very practical. It's to give us time to practice. If we have sex, then we have a family and we have children, and then we don't have time to practice. So people think renunciation is giving something up, but it's seeing things as they truly are, right? So people would say, oh, you renounced sex, you gave it up. And he would say, no, I renounced not having time to practice, right? So there's always a beautiful way to look at this. And this understanding of renunciation has taken me very far, and I go back to it all the time. So there's so many cool things that I've renounced, right? I've renounced skin problems. I've renounced bloating. I've renounced weight gain, right? So we think of renunciation of giving up something that we want or something that we crave, but there are so many negative things that we can give up in our life that will actually alleviate our suffering. And that's the point, is to alleviate suffering and to help others alleviate suffering. So I'm super into renouncing. And this really freed me. This and some of the other Dharma teachers really freed me. And I realized, I could take control of my relationship with food, with my body, and I could be the best architect of my own life. I could write a script. I could decide how I wanted to look. And this was really radical for me, because I was, the girl with the short hair. I was the girl playing on the boys' soccer team. I was the tomboy. And I was so conscious of running away from this idealized idea of feminine, female beauty. I thought it was a trap. It's a toxic trap that, product advertisers lay out for us, and women are we're really under attack in many ways with the toxic products and these toxic ideologies of how we should be. So I was running fast for my whole life away from that, but not toward anything. And that is a big problem. That is a very sad, detached way to be. And I was for a long time, until I found Dharma. I was already in my 40s. So thank goodness for that. And so with Dharma, I started running towards something, and that was radical for me. But I wasn't really coming into my full power until I found the Tara dancing. And then I found my Tara teacher, Premadasara, who has such a way of distilling this information. And she teaches that Tara allows herself to be beautiful. Why? So that people will be drawn to her, so that they can take in the teachings. So this was like so radical for me. This was so mind-blowing. And I could finally, as a woman, embrace femininity and beauty, and have a purpose and a reason for it, and not a reason which was to take from others. It was to give, right? So that's a pretty good measure of something. If your goal is to give, it's probably coming from a good place. And so I decided to be beautiful. And that's made all the difference. So here we are, I'm on day 17, ferocious, like great energy. And this time has been so different because not only was I realizing I was focused on the toxicity, but I knew the majority of this was mind training, right? So the first time I'm eating in my mind, I'm cooking in my mind, what am I going to make next time? And all these mind fucks and mind games that we play on ourselves. And I didn't succumb to any of them, which was really good. But this time, there's none of that. There's no cravings, there's no mind games, there's no mind fucks. And I think because I believe in karma and reincarnation and there's no YOLO, I'm not sabotaging, in which I got to eat this now because I'm going to die tomorrow and I'll never be able to eat this again, or I'm afraid to eat soup because then I'll want bread. And so like all the stories that we tell ourselves. So there's so many beautiful antidotes for this kind of poison, these kind of poisonous stories we tell ourselves. And this is effortless effort. This is the true meaning of it. And I put myself back in phase one, not just to lose this extra toxicity, but working with Cindy, leading a retreat in February where we brought people through a 24-hour cleanse. I wanted to put myself back in this mindset and really understand, what am I asking people to do? And then how much farther can I take it? And so I'm so glad that I laid this challenge out for myself, and it made me realize every spring I'm going to do 30 days spring cleaning. My body wants it and needs it. My mind craves it. And it's a great reset. So here's what it did to me, which I've been talking about the whole time. But I say rewired my body, and it was like rebooting a computer. It really was. The cravings were gone. It was like immediate weight and toxicity loss, where people who knew me well were staring at me and like decided I was a cousin of myself. Like I'm standing in their house and they're like, I decided that you are your cousin because it can't be you. Like that's how dramatic and fast it was. Absolutely debilitating pain in my ears, inner ears, from traveling my entire life, 46 years of torture, gone because of the inflammation. No idea. I always had pitta, a lot of heat. I was eating chilies, nightshades, all these things. My core temperature has dropped so dramatically. It's like night and day. Where my hot spots are, I don't have them anymore. It's so dramatic, the things that you think you realize how profound this change was, and it just keeps on giving. And of course, freeing my time for spiritual practice has been incredibly amazing. I wanted to read this awesome quote because there's so many amazing connections between the Tara dancing and maintaining radiant health, right? And I'm just discovering this because I'm just going back to the science. So I just want to read a quote from this amazing book called Dr. Bernard Jensen's Guide to Better Bowel Care, because this is what I read on Saturdays now in bed. Okay, so what then is required to move the bowel contents along on time? Good bowel tone gives the intestinal tract the power to move waste materials properly through the system. Good tone is developed and maintained by following a proper diet and getting enough exercise. Right, so they talk about fiber and exercise. Diets rich in fiber are required to give the intestinal musculature something to work against. Consider how weightlifters use weights to give their muscles something to work against. Strength and tone cannot be developed or maintained unless there is an opposition to muscular action. So dietary bulk is one way to do that. It creates roughage, and so it creates extra movement, and so it's good, it keeps you toned. But the other way is through physical exercise. And so he talks here about dancing, right? In a manner, exercising the trunk, especially in the abdominal wall and back, helps the intestine in its proper place and provides structures with good tone for the intestine to work against. Most primitive cultures have dance movements that exercise the trunk, back, and abdominal muscles, but Westerners don't. So this Tara dancing with a ton of this is actually aiding our digestion. And we dance these 21 qualities of Tara, and the last quality we dance before complete enlightenment is radiant health. So this cannot be a mistake. This is when I started like putting the pieces together, like, okay, these practices are like profoundly inextricably linked. And so the more I look, the more I'm realizing that they are. So we do Tara dance every morning, 7 days a week, and there's special events. And so, as I've said, this can be used as a tool for focus and discipline. And this is everyone, but I think whatever daily practice you can give your body, speech, and mind to, your whole heart to, that you love, do that. You know, I've seen people blow out their knees because the monk told them to do prostrations, and they think this is spiritual practice to put themselves in pain. Or people who are in agony sitting in meditative equipoise for hours and are in absolute agony. and cannot walk. Meanwhile, we're standing and dancing and expressing joy and moving and stirring all the juices and doing all these positive things for our body. So this is not my only chosen practice, but this is my main chosen practice. So I do invite you all to come explore this if it calls to you. From this morning's Tara practice, one of the practitioners, when we dedicate the merit at the end, she said, because she had so much physical pain and it's subsiding right now, she said, move, jump, and be joyful. That is my choice. And that is my choice. Nothing is going to alleviate everything 100%, right? It's like, it's always combinations. And that's one thing I just want to sort of end with, which everyone, especially when I went through this dramatic change, everyone said, what are you doing? You know, if they're even interested. But it's not that relevant what I'm doing. It's more like, what are you doing? What are you not doing? And then what should you be doing? So, right, I found the thing that worked for me, and I'm happy to share it with people. I'm thrilled to share it. Mostly they get bored and glazed over because they don't really want to know it's something that can be done. But it's most important to figure out your formula. That's what this is. This is like, instead of paying someone thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to come up with a personalized medical plan for you to follow, you're going to figure it out yourself, and then you'll follow it or you won't. But at least you saved all that money, and you've hopefully maybe learned something about yourself and about your habits and how to engender good habits and how to let go of stories and all these really useful things that aren't really about diet at all, but are just about being a human being on this planet and trying to manifest wisdom mind and do something awesome. It was lovely to spend time with you all. Thank you for your patience in allowing me to pull all these ideas together, and your support. And yeah, I'm here with questions or whoever wants to endeavor on this group adventure going forward. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.